If you are interested in purchasing the No Way Out Volume 14 trade paperback, there will be a link in the description to the official Walking Dead from Skybound store. Make a Path presents Let's Talk. This video contains major comic book spoilers. Let's talk The Walking Dead No Way Out story arc breakdown. Abraham is preparing to lead a cleanup crew outside the walls of Alexandria. The recent gun battle with the scavengers have attracted a large amount of walkers. Andrea is alone and she watches their back in the lookout bell tower. The crew leave the gates and they get to work clearing the way. Aaron has a meeting with Douglas and they discuss Rick becoming the new leader of the Alexandria safe zone. They also talk about Eric's recent stabbing while on a recruiting mission and how it's too dangerous to keep recruiting new members for the community. Suddenly, Abraham's group hears a warning shot from the bell tower. They round the corner and come face to face with the first wave of the mega herd. There is nothing they can do but retreat back to the safety behind the walls of Alexandria. Bruce is the last man in and he falls inside, being tackled and bitten by a walker. Holly dispatches the threat and Abraham sadly has to put their friend out of his misery. Rick then holds a meeting to discuss the threats building up right outside the walls of Alexandria. He encourages people to arm themselves and he opens the armory. Also, the current snowfall will add extra stress to the solar power system and he asks people to share housing for now. Morgan will go to Michonne's. Jesse will show up at Rick's, asking to bunk down with Rick and Carl. Douglas will continue to spiral out of control and lose his grip. Upstairs at Rick's house, Ron cries to Carl about his father being bad while Carl's father is good. Downstairs, Jesse and Rick will become closer in conversation and Jesse will make the first move. Rick will accept and he'll tap that. Meanwhile, Father Gabriel prays, walkers build up, wall patrols begin. Andrea tries to keep warm while she's stranded in the bell tower. Abraham will show up to warn Rick that the wall is pushing in. A plan is made to use a truck as a brace. Glenn also offers a plan to lure walkers away and also bring food to Andrea. A rope is attached to one roof inside the safe zone and then outside the safe zone. Heath, Glenn, and Spencer crawl across the rope. Hands of the dead reach for them only inches away. One grabs a hold of Glenn's backpack, almost ripping him off the rope. Heath and Glenn make it across, but the rope snaps with Spencer still on it. He swings, holding on for dear life, and slams into the wall. Glenn and Heath try to pull him up. Suddenly, they feel some help. Ironically, Andrea shows up, saving the man who came out to save her. While watching the wall, Tobin and Holly notice that a board is slightly moving on the side of the truck, and suddenly it crashes in. Tobin stays to fight, telling Holly to go warn Rick immediately. Rick runs to back up Tobin. Holly runs to get Abraham and a crew together. Rick stops, seeing that Tobin has been eaten alive. He stayed and died fighting. Rick honors him by making a stand alone, fighting against the dead that are now pouring in. Morgan joins his friend, but there are too many and he is bitten. Rick pulls him away and helps him get to his feet. Michonne suddenly appears and without any hesitation at all, she chops off Morgan's arm. Just as the walkers were about to get Michonne, Morgan and Rick, Abraham and crew show up and enter the battle, allowing Rick and Michonne to escort Morgan to Rick's house. They run and get Denise, the doctor in Alexandria. Glenn, Heath, Andrea, and Spencer all watch helplessly from outside. The battle next to the wall continues, but it is absolutely hopeless. There are just too many walkers pouring in. They get overrun and need to run to separate housing. Meanwhile, back at Rick's, Morgan is being patched up and Rick prepares to go back to the fight at the gates when Maggie bursts into the house frantic, telling Rick to lock the door and look out the window. Rick's heart drops as his eyes soak up the horror. Walkers are now freely roaming the streets of the Alexandria safe zone. Carl watches over Morgan, while Rick, Jesse, Ron, Maggie, Sophia, and Michonne watch their safe streets fill up with the dead. Over at the church, Father Gabriel finds himself in another position where people needing help are pounding on his door. This time, however, he opens it and lets Eugene and Nicholas inside. Abraham holds Rosita as they wait out the night. Eugene, Father Gabriel, and Nicholas are alone in the church. Aaron and Eric at their house. Michonne will have to put Morgan down as he passes in the night. Rick wakes up next to Jesse. Their bond is growing closer each minute, but Rick must get up because Denise needs to go back to the infirmary to help anybody who is wounded throughout the night. Alexandria has fallen. Rick decides to escort Denise, and then they will flee and come back for the others. Rick pulls a walker off the porch and into the house, and he kills it, and they smear the rot all over themselves. Maggie doesn't feel comfortable and doesn't believe that Sophia can handle it. They decide to stay in the house. Jessie says she'll follow Rick anywhere. Michonne, Denise, Rick, Carl, Jesse, and Ron exit the house and begin to make their way to the infirmary. Since Denise has to work on patience and can't get the rot all over her, Michonne escorts her swiftly to the infirmary, far ahead of the others. Jesse's son Ron gets scared, and without warning, walkers attack him. She cries out and walkers pounce on her next. As they eat her alive, she cries out for Rick. Carl yells for help for his father. They will get him, he says. Jesse is still holding on to his hand. Rick cuts her at the wrist to free his son, and they run away as Jesse calls out, "Don't leave us." Douglas appears in a doorway, and he shoots at walkers to give Rick and Carl cover. Rick yells for him to stop. "You're only attracting more." Michonne gets Denise inside safely, and she turns to go back for Carl and Rick. Douglas, now surrounded, goes down shooting. Carl's grip loosens and slips right out of Rick's hand as Rick runs ahead. He stops suddenly, spins around, and is horrified at what he sees. One of Douglas's bullets went wild, hitting Carl in the eye and exiting out his temple. The wound looks fatal. Carl drops to the ground like dead weight. Rick scoops up his fallen boy and rushes him to the infirmary. Now, they can't flee. To even have a chance at saving Carl's life, Rick must stay. He cannot let the dead overrun them anymore. Inside the infirmary, Denise frantically works on Carl. Luckily, the brain was not damaged. She can hear the packing of flesh, cracking of bones, and thudding of bodies from just outside. Rick and Michonne battle right out front like gladiators in an arena. All the other survivors see them, and they look on like spectators, and they know if they don't get any help, Michonne and Rick will die. And that is all the motivation that Abraham needs. Abraham lets out a battle cry to alert the walkers and draw some away from his friends, and he enters the fight with Rosita at his side. Holly leaps down from a ledge that she was hiding on. Aaron and Eric are next, joining the fight. Eugene tells Gabriel this is a fight that he cannot hide from. They are all going to have to fight. The dead outnumber the living 10-1. The cracking sounds of skull bones breaking and thuds of dead bodies falling are the soundtrack to the early morning horrors. The battle rages on for what seems like forever, but finally they stand, sweating, breathing heavy, and looking at the mound of bodies on the ground. Far too many to even count. There isn't a patch of ground that can be seen among all the fallen undead. They go to the gate to finish off more walkers, and they end up reuniting with Andrea, Glenn, Heath, and Spencer, who were clearing out walkers from the outside in. Rick is checking on Carl, who lays in a coma, like his father before him. The cleanup is as horrific as the battle. Glenn discovers Jesse's body, her hand still hanging from a piece of flesh where Rick cut at it to free his son. Glenn turns away, not having the stomach for it. Abraham steps up and puts the former resident of Alexandria down. The battle has a major impact on Rick. he envisions the restart of a civilization. Together with the people of Alexandria, they secure the walls, build trenches, learn to protect themselves. However, some residents are hesitant. One in particular, Nicholas, plans a reckless uprising with the end goal of killing Rick and Glenn. There will be many accomplishments, and there will always be plenty of obstacles. The slow restructuring and expansion of Alexandria during the aftermath of the battle is as important as the battle itself. But Alexandria isn't the only community out there, and a man spying on them through his binoculars will soon introduce them to a larger world than they ever would have imagined. The No Way Out story arc to this day remains one of my all-time favorite story arcs from the Walking Dead comic. I did leave a lot of little things out of this video, so if you have not read this story arc, or if you have not read it in a while, I highly recommend you read the full story arc. And again, there's a link in the description to buy it right from the creator of The Walking Dead through his company, Skybound. These videos are done a little different, and again, I hope you enjoyed this. Please feel free to share it with other fans of The Walking Dead. This has been a breakdown of The Walking Dead comics story arc, No Way Out, Volume 14. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe now.